friends, cultural commandos. We are down here at the Stephen Harvey Fine Art Project. See if we can get somebody to open the door here.
Sorry.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Okay. And what was the title of the show again? New York, Paris, Nexus?
Paris, New York, Nexus.
Paris, New York, Nexus. Okay. Well, Steve Harvey Fine Arts Projects is one of our favorite galleries. Oh gosh. Does anybody know who that is? I think that's Balthus. And we like what Stephen does here because not only does he love painting, but he also has a very passionate interest in local art history.
There's something about that reminds me of like when Hopper went and painted Paris in the like early 20th century.
Oh, these are a couple of pieces by Louisa Malthus daughter. And well, I guess these are scenes of Paris. It's titled Paris Seine Yellow, undated. And Paris Series Small Yellow, undated. This is 10.5 by 19. Well, Louisa was the wife of Leland Bell. We'll look at some of Leland's paintings a little farther down the line here.
It's all about Paris. People going to Paris.
This is Anna Harvey. Just talked to Steve. He said this is his aunt, his father's sister. It's titled Kindling an Open Window. And Steve said that Anna took off when she was a kid. She and her mother went and lived in Paris, and she stayed in Paris except for a couple of years during World War II that she came back to New York. And she was mentored by Brancusi. And she did a large oil portrait of him that's in the Matisse Museum. There's another one by Anna Harvey. Pen and ink. Firewood. Well, I guess there was a whole contingency of American artists that either stayed in Paris or went to Paris after World War II. And I mean, we hear about people like Sam Francis and Ellsworth Kelly, but we don't hear so much about the figurative painters. This is Balthus. Filet à bras levés, Michelin, 1973. Pencil on paper, 14 by 11 inches. Well, I'll have to ask Steve how he got his hands on that for the show. This is Leland Bell.
That's actually from France.
Two Figures and a Cat, 1980. Well, Leland Bell is quite an interesting character. If I'm not mistaken, I think that he actually worked at Peggy Guggenheim's Art of the Century, or maybe it was the early Guggenheim Museum. And I think Jackson Pollock was also working there at the same time. And so he was around a long time. And was always, at least as far as I know, was doing a lot of figurative painting, and I guess during the reemergence of Neo-Expressionism in the mid-70s, he was kind of revived. It's a nice Jean Helion, titled Remade, 57 by 39. Jean Helion is a very interesting painting. He started out as an abstract painter, I think, working with a group called Concrete Abstract or Abstract Creation in Paris, kind of geometrical abstract painters. And I think after the war I don't know whether it was because of traumatic experiences or what, but he became a figurative painter. I don't have a date on this, I don't see one. But yeah, I think he was also married to Peggy Guggenheim's daughter for a while. It's another Balthus drawing.
And did you see, where was that?
Is this a lake?
He was in the 1980s is when he died, right?
Died in
This is titled Study for New Resting, 1972. Pencil on paper, 14 by 11.
John Myers, if you must have known him.
Well, I was talking to Steve when I came in, and I was saying that I thought a lot of these people were involved with one of the first co-op galleries, the Jane Street Gallery, and we kind of quibbled back and forth a bit. Turns out that probably about 4 or 5 of these people were showing there. You can do your own research and check out if I'm right. This is a Robert De Niro Sr. untitled charcoal on paper.
Not effective. Not yet. Maybe they can do it now this time.
Now, well, some people don't know that Robert De Niro, the actor, had a father that was also a very well-known painter. And he was another one of the New York artists that I don't know whether he stayed as a figurative painter, but during the period that abstract expressionism and action painting and pop art and all that stuff was happening, he sort of stuck stubbornly, loyally to a type of figurative painting. This is actually a very good example of his work, and I always liked it because he's doing these things with the fat brush strokes.
It's only fun when you finish if you're happy with the results of either of these things. Then it's fun.
And like fairs,
This is Bob Thompson, Study for Expulsion and Nativity, 1963 pastel on paper.
I want it to be like 20 times bigger, but it's just, whatever show you're showing, it just looks like a whole different place.
I had a next door neighbor that introduced me to the work of Bob Thompson about 30 years ago, and I've been a fan ever since. Bob is kind of a tragic story. A lot of people actually say that he was like the Jean-Michel Basquiat of the 60s. And he also died young of drug problems. It's another Bob Thompson. First Study for Ascension to the Heavens, 1963, gouache on paper, 24 by 18. Well, Bob was great because he was biting on a lot of classical compositions, and then he would kind of change things up a little bit, paint over areas, abstract other areas. And although I haven't seen a lot of the gouaches are actually, this is pretty nice. And he was also part of the kind of this small group of figurative painters. Lester Johnson was one of them. Robert De Niro Sr. This is also Bob Thompson. Untitled Nudes, 1959. Kind of makes me think of a Matisse or a Modigliani. And a Harvey shell and decanter, oil on paper. And John Helion,
Well, it was really lovely.
sweets pisserie. Excuse my French. Okay, let's see if there's something interesting in the back room. All right, there's a De Niro. I don't know who that is. That could be an early Leland Bell, but the piece I wanted to look at. I believe this is a Buford Delaney painting. And this is not actually part of the show. I don't see it on the list, but it is in the show. Okay, good. I know that Buford did spend maybe his last 10 or 15 years in Paris. And, you know, he's been looked upon and commented on as being one of the first people that got into the all-over abstraction. And, but you don't get a chance to see too many of these around here in New York.
Our field paintings like this, you know?
But also he did things like this and he called them portraits.
Well, you know, do you see that there's like a head in this one?
I was noticing that there's
It's kind of crazy, right?
like kind of a head in
There's a
there.
little head in there.
Now, who was he pals with?
Great question. Well, he had a brother. That's one thing.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
And he lived in Soho really early, and he lived in Paris for 15 years. And he, like some of our brethren, like Bob De Niro, had mental illness. It was like he had to deal with, and oh my God, you know, hard times.
Hard
for
times
artists.
for art. Oh, yeah, and they got so much better now.
At least the medications have gotten better.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I
No,
don't
that's
know.
true.
I wonder
We're
if that's
great- we're
true.
great-
Didn't
we're
these guys
great
just
option.
drink? What did they do?
That may be an ineffective
It's ineffective?
Yeah.
Well,
night in Paris.
And this is Helion, the riots of 1968
Night.
With a comma?
Yeah.
in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
What's the meaning?
Looks like an oil on board.
It's watercolor and mixed media. Watercolor. And,
So, James Kalm reporting on Paris, New York Nexus. Here at the Steve Harvey Fine Arts Project. 208 Forsyth Street on the Lower East Side. You can leave your comments, critiques, reviews, ideas, talking points, suggestions below. Like this and share it, and you can subscribe. And as always, we have to thank you, Kate.
you play?
No,
Nada?
just with myself.